Welcome to the Veteran Entrepreneur Masterclass with Brett Henderson, founder of Strategic Wealth Endeavor. We've created a community of veteran entrepreneurs just like you who are ready to help you succeed. Our podcast provides expert advice and resources so you can overcome any obstacle in your way. With the help of Brett and veteran guest experts, you can build a battle-ready business mindset to take your company to the next level. Thank you for listening to the Veteran Entrepreneur Masterclass. Now, on to the show.
The skills you learn early in your working life can give you valuable insight into later careers. Sam Medina consults with businesses to cut through redundancies and grow using process improvement and technology. But Brett, your guest is also a licensed vocational nurse, and he gained medical experience during his time in the Navy.
Sam, good morning. How are you?
Good afternoon, Brett. Sorry.
It's morning here. That's okay. I'm in California. Where are you?
I'm in Houston Central Time, so we're 2 hours ahead. Yes, sir.
Tejas. That's cool. So you and I, have we ever met in person?
No, sir.
And this is our first time actually looking at each other. This is an audio podcast, but hopefully we're going to change it to video. So that's another foreshadowing. But have you and I ever connected before?
Only through LinkedIn.
Exactly. And then are you a client of mine, or do you and I have any sort of financial relationship?
No.
None whatsoever. Okay, cool. I'd like to just throw that out there. I think that's a testament to the power of LinkedIn if you actually engage it. I think a lot of veterans in business everyone talks about LinkedIn. They should be using LinkedIn, but they're not sure how to do it. I think it just really starts out by reaching out, connecting with whoever you want to connect with, and having a genuine conversation. Right? How do you recall our first conversation? I think was mildly good because you're here, right? But do you want to chat about our first conversation and how you think it led to here?
Yeah, I mean, you reached out and you sent me a LinkedIn, and I'm pretty active on LinkedIn as far as managing and connecting with people. I think if you use it for networking, it's very valuable. If you're coming at it with a hard sell, everybody gets sold to. I think with you and me, you're pretty clear about it. You're like, Sam, I'm not trying to sell you anything. We're just networking, which I think is the power of LinkedIn when it's done right, is you have a conversation and you determine, hey, this wasn't a hard sell, and he has things that I like he said, and I think he liked some things I said. Let's keep the conversation going. So that's what I got out of our first LinkedIn phone call connection.
I think that's a nugget right there, because so many people, and I don't know where this came from, where these gurus are teaching people to connect and pitch. But if you got no relationship, it's just like you're going on a date and you're asking someone to marry them after 2 seconds. And it's just not good. It doesn't make you feel good. I hate when people do it to me, so I'll never do it to anyone. So the fact that you and I just had a genuine conversation about business, your background, your history, what you've done, and why I thought you'd be a great podcast, I think is a huge lesson. I'm going to ask you about your background briefly in the Navy momentarily, but this conversation just led me to it just reminded me of a message I received on LinkedIn yesterday. A gentleman connected, and he just sent me a video pitch of one of the platforms they use for technology, and he wants me to use. And I'm like, dude, if you would have taken a second to ask me if I even heard of your organization, I would have told you that I already use it and I already have a relationship, and I already know what your program is. But because you just connected and pitched, you have no idea, and you totally just turned me off. Right? I'm like, rookies connected pitch. Your professionals ask questions. Just ask questions. Right? So that I had to get that out there a little bit. So I'm going to ask you a question. Tell us briefly what you did in the Navy, brother.
I was stationed in Chicago, Camp Pendleton, Japan, back to California, did one tour, and that was my 5 years in what felt like a split second.
And you just made fun of me a little bit, me being a Marine. So you spent a little time with Marines?
I was field medical service school, straight out of boot camp, and then went back to Camp Pendleton my last year, and was absolutely the best year of my life. Really the core to what a corpsman does as far as the green side and combat medicine was, I was almost wanting to stay in.
And you were Doc.
Yes, sir. The
Marines love Doc. Right? Because you're one of us, but you're a little different too. So we can tell you things we can't tell our peers sometimes. Were you almost like an armchair psychologist as well as the BAS guy? Battalion 8 Station?
No. I think we had a big enough team that I was primarily in the back of the ambulance versus with the platoon leaders or a squad. I was the forward ambulance, so I was spared some of that part.
Right. So one of your skills, though, you're certified to draw blood, whatnot. And what was the one-liner you just gave me? You're a little rusty, but you'll practice on me because.
Yeah. It's an art. Use it or lose it. Just like most things. Some things like riding a bike is like giving a flu shot. There's not a whole lot of science to it. Other things like drawing blood, kind of having your BS detector if somebody is not telling you the truth, being able to detect if they're in pain, if they're stressed out or something's wrong. I think that's one of the main things I got from the hospital care in Japan. And then coming to the green side in Camp Pendleton is, Marines aren't going to tell you their pain, right? That's not the motto. But being able to decipher that at a lot of levels helps you have a more meaningful conversation and actually help people.
So to help with your interpretation and just intuitive human being skills, interactions.
Absolutely. You use it throughout business, even in negotiations. Somebody's pulling your leg, something doesn't feel right. You're reading their body language, which unfortunately we lose a lot of doing the virtual. But, from that nursing part, it's just being able to tell when people are uncomfortable or feel awkward, or they're just giving off a signal that you're picking up. And I think that was really the value of why I wanted to go into nursing is helping people when they were most vulnerable. And then on the flip side, going to the Marine side, that was, exact opposite. I mean, you're going full force and you're learning anything and everything and just in a chaotic environment a lot of times. But I was comfortable in that. And I enjoyed it.
Awesome. Well, with that, though, I have a question. So you shared your last tours with the Marines and you loved it.
Yes.
But yet you still decided to get out. So what was your catalyst, or what was your mindset? What was your thought when you're having a good time? You could stay in or re-enlist or get out. Well, do you mind sharing your mindset then?
I think my mindset was I needed to grow, and my capacity to grow in the military was limited. The hospital corpsman field is very saturated. So the ability to move up in rank and in pay scale and all that was 10, 12, 14 years to make, E6 or a decent rank. And so really? I just felt that I was being held back on my potential, my contribution to other parts of the industry, of my community, of just, the private sector as a whole. And that's kind of what really drove me to find other avenues to be able to bring these skills to market and do something different.
Was it a gradual decision, or had you made up your mind, even 2 years before you got out, or a year before you got out? Or
no, I was pretty set on 5 years was my term when I went into the Navy. So I kind of had that plan. I'm going to join to basically get the GI Bill to have a way to pay for college. That was my mindset, my end goals. I needed money because I wanted to go to college. The Navy was my answer. So that was kind of my 5 years was already programmed. 5 years unless something extraordinary happens, or I just love it to death, like 100% across the board, I would stay. But that was kind of my decision, and I make that decision and I stick to it, and that was the plan, and that's what I executed.
Okay, so you knew you were getting out, you knew you had the money, you went to school, and where'd you go to college?
I started out at the University of Phoenix for the bachelor's in business, just because it was kind of that hybrid, and I could use a lot of military credits. I did some Dante's, I did some NICEP credits while I was in Japan for Spanish and some of the electives, and so that made it much faster for me to get through that 4-year degree. And then after that, I decided to go ahead and do my master's. I really wanted to do the registered nurse, but unfortunately, the time that it would take to get into a program that competitive and the pay difference, it just made the MBA more attractive and a lot less time to do more things as far as variety and not be stuck kind of in healthcare only. So that's kind of the path I chose.
So was the undergrad parlayed directly into your MBA? Were you working as executive MBA programs? You're kind of doing both at the same time?
No, I did. I did the bachelor's, and then I kind of debated. I was having I had my two kids in the time that I started doing my MBA, my bachelor's and my MBA, and then I was just doing the different changing jobs and things of that nature. So there was a lot going on, but I knew I wanted to do something in business, and the master's was kind of my end goal to say I've reached as much education as I need to be a successful business owner. Although that wasn't on my radar for 2003 to 2017 was never never a thought for me that I was going to be my own business owner. It was just more blending healthcare with the business aspect, having the two work together, and that's kind of where I found my career.
So how did that happen then? Did you just woke up one day, I'm solo and now I own it versus I got to go find $1 versus $1 being given to me? Or how did that transition happen?
Well, I think in most of my career, I do not walk away from anything that I've worked for or worked at. If I do, it's because it's adamantly something that I don't believe in or something I feel is holding me back from my true or full potential. So, did the 5 years there. I typically had like a 5-year turn of where the companies were either changing business models. So it was always that you're being laid off. And then, that was straight out of military. It was kind of the situation. And then at the hospital was the same thing, was this department is being eliminated. With
really? That's no fun.
It was I don't regret it at all. I feel like I was aging twice the rate at the amount of stress when I was at the hospital. And I think one of the biggest things for me was the 401k and the ability to roll that over to actually get an entrepreneur or a veteran to own their business and have some type of funding without having to go to angel investors and trying to bother your family or asking your family. It's sometimes uncomfortable. And in my case, my family is not the ones that's going to have the money to even back me up. But the pension, the 401k, investing into those, if you are in corporate America, and understanding how that's performing is a huge foundation for somebody wanting to launch.
So let's talk more about that. So were you laid off and then you realized you wanted to launch, or were you still working and had the opportunity? And so was that when you launched your own gig? I'm trying to follow the timeline, and then we can talk about the power of 401k and liquidity there.
When they let me go, the first thing I wanted to do was sleep.
Right.
I slept for about a week straight just because we were running, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning to 8 or 9 at night, about 6 months out of the year.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm out, I'm decompressing, just trying to figure out what I was going to do. And, first thing I did the last time was to update the resume, start posting, start really connecting to my network, just letting them know, hey, I've been let go. And, through my career, I think the reputation I built was a quality product and service, top-notch customer service. So everybody of my previous clients knew what I brought to the table. And, lo and behold, they asked me to consult for them. So they said, Sam, why don't you come do consulting for us? And that helped me launch that. And then through another referral, he's like, hey, they're looking for somebody that needs your skill set. And so it was all referral, word of mouth of people that you built trust with, that you had serviced for 6, 7, 8 years. And so those relationships were really key and vital to me being able to launch something, even though I wasn't 100% sure what it was. I had 2 clients saying, we want you to do X and you want you to do Y, and I knew how to do both. And so that allowed me to kind of bridge that while I kind of got my bearings on what exactly is Samerica Consulting Group, or what is it going to be. And so we launched in 2017.
Awesome. So you your path was always there, but you didn't see it, right? And then it kind of became clear as you went through life.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the blind spots, is that corporate America, you feel like you're obligated to the 8 to 5, your bills, your financial obligations. And so there's not a lot of vision to say, what else could this look like if I didn't have to do all these hours, or I was able to make more, or if I was able to do my own schedule. And that's now what I have. And now and I tell people, if I'm going to work myself to death, I might as well work for myself.
Right.
And that's what I felt I was doing at Memorial Hermann, was just working at just hour after hour. I didn't have any time with my family. Pretty much missed my kids' first 5 years for the most part. And then, 2017 came about. I figured some things out, and then now I'll get to spend as much time with them as I want. And I think that, that outvalues any amount any company could ever pay.
That's awesome, man. I'm family first. With my son being 5, it's huge. And it's the same thing. There's days I could be working, but I choose to spend time with him. And, I love going to the park, being the only dad in the park, meet a bunch of nannies, but I still love them. I'm there with my son and all the nannies. And I know other dads working and they could be with their child, but that's okay. So I'll give up a few bucks to spend more time with my son, any day. So I appreciate that. Let's go back to an item you touched base on regarding capital, because a lot of the conversations I'm having with veterans, everyone's trying to find capital. Everyone needs money to get stuff going. And you either have it or you don't. And if you don't have it, you got to get it. And if you got to get it, a lot of times you just sell ownership. And a lot of guys don't want to give up ownership. So when you tapped into your 401k, here's kind of a strategy depending on the amount of capital you need. And I'll just throw the rules out there. So with any 401k plan, once you have over 100 grand, the maximum loan you can take out from a 401k is 50,000. And so if you're still working, to be able to borrow 50 grand, if you have 100,000 saved up, is pretty good. With any loan, there's interest. So you repay yourself the interest over time, and generally about 5 years to pay it back. If you use it for a down payment on the home, it can be extended for 10 years. So it's a nice way to get capital. However, if you leave your company, you may not have that option, right? You can't take a loan if you're no longer there, because you have to pay it back through payroll. So what do you do? And then what I normally hear, and I don't know your answer yet, so I'm going to ask you here in a second, Sam, did you do this? So normally what happens is you will have to, as you leave the company, you roll over to an IRA and you just take some assets out. And if you're younger than 59 and a half, you have access to the assets, but it's also taxes and penalties on that. So how did you source your capital, your equity from your 401k, Sam? If you mind sharing. Sorry, that's kind of a personal question. I didn't tee you up for that one.
No. Yeah, I'm no shame at all in sharing. And again, I think the power of transparency is to give people ideas of what might trigger or give them the aha moment of, wow, I could do this. I think for me, even before you get to the money part, one of the challenges I found was nobody wants to give you credit, at least not business credit. And so if you are wanting to start a business, is start it now, even though you don't have any revenue. But they all beat me up because you don't have 2 years. You don't have 2 years. Nobody wants to give you credit. So just get a LLC, a S Corp, a C Corp out there and get some type of revenue. But once you get past that 2 years, it'll save you a lot of headache on trying to get a credit card to do some business expenditures or give you a little bit of breathing room. I think going back to the funding in my situation, I looked at a lot of resources. One of the things I'll let entrepreneurs know, or veterans know, once you're let go, there's all sorts of hawks coming after you in your 401k. Hey, we want to own a franchise. Hey, you want to do that? They know you have money to roll over, and they're going to sell you all sorts of things. And I think the biggest thing is not against franchising or any type of business venture. If it's really something you enjoy doing and you're really good at it, that's completely up to you to decide, I'm going to do this or not. I had lots of PTO time. I had a pension, and then I had a 401k when pensions still existed way back when.
That's great.
I was fortunate when I did start with this organization that I was, what's the word called? I guess I was vetted within the first 2 or 3 years. Benefits started right away. I had just got laid off at my other job. My wife was 7 or 8 months pregnant, and we had a hurricane with around June, and then about the time they let me go. So my wife's pregnant. We just had a hurricane, and I don't have a job. So that was kind of my transition. And that was where I was really grateful to work for an organization that big. They're stable, they're big, lots of pride to be at that organization. And then they had a matching 401k. So definitely took advantage of that, built that up over the years, never pulled out of it as far as taking any loans or anything of that nature, and just let it build. I did some research, found a program that would allow me to roll over the 401k into a retirement plan as a C corporation, so it's its own entity. There's some tax advantages and safeties as pieces built into it that will not allow creditors to come after my company or at least my bank account, because it's owned by my retirement plan.
Right.
And it also helps me build my retirement plan, which when you're starting a business, that's not the first thing that you're thinking about. It's where am I going to get my first check? Where am I going to get enough money to pay my bills? The credit cards, the debt, those are all just additional self-inflicting wounds that I put myself in, right? By overbuying, overliving, wanting things that maybe I was living beyond my means. And that comes back to really limit your ability to grow your business, to even think about business ownership. And so to me, your personal debt is a huge risk of when you're starting out on your own, and something you have to consider if you are thinking about and doing this, is trying to minimize as much of that as possible. So I rolled all that over, started paying myself, felt good having some money coming in, and then that payroll tax started. All my profits was going back to employee payroll tax. And so I was hesitant, I was like, I'll do my own QuickBooks Online. I'll manage my own books, and just kept doing that. It got all messed up. And then finally I was referred a friend. And again, the power of referrals, not all referrals from a friend are good referrals, but from the few that are very trusted friends, they're typically going to be a good resource for you. So she gave me an accountant that worked with me, and I just handed it off to him. He got my book straightened. So one of the recommendations is find a good accountant pretty early in the process, so that you understand what are my tax options of, how much do I pay in Social Security, how much do I pay in Medicare and all that sort of things. And then if you start to grow your employees, what are those taxes going to look like, and how much do I have to make in revenue to actually cover hiring somebody? I was really happy to bring on 10 or 15 contractors, 1099 contractors, but there was no way I could afford 10 or 15 W-2 employees for the seasonal type work that I did. Right. So it's just something that I wish I had learned, or at least recognized earlier, that having employees or being your own employee is expensive, and you have to include that in your regular operational revenue, so that you don't end up with a zero balance at the end of the year, or a tax liability that you weren't planning for.
Yeah, no. So those are all great points. And as you're sharing, it's triggering several of my own personal experiences, which I'll hold off on. But I don't think you answered the question. So when you had your retirement accounts, you rolled them over, the retirement accounts, did you drain them? Did you borrow against them? Did you get a loan? Did you start your own 401k, then you could take a loan against it? Or did you just take a withdrawal and have to pay tax and penalties?
Well, that was the program I told you, that's the retirement plan. It's basically a rollover that, as long as I have a C corporation and I pay into the plan, I do not incur the penalties of early withdrawals. The way this program is designed, that's IRS compliant and that sort of thing. But it's an expensive program to invest in, but it's compliant. It allows you to pull the money and use the full dollar amount for basically operating your business. As long as you don't go and buy a high asset thing, they do keep an eye on that. They do your company valuation to let you know how much your company is worth, and then they have an administrative monthly fee that I pay that keeps my standing with IRS in check. And
so did you pay that back then? Did you pay back those Because if it's a distribution, if it's out of the plan, if you're running expenses, I mean, it's out of the plan. The money's gone. So that's considered distribution. So at some point you have to pay that back. Or this is an interesting program I haven't heard of, and I do 401ks for a living. So I'm trying to understand a little bit kind of what that was, because there's two ways. Generally, you take cash out and you pay tax and penalties on it, or you set up your own 401k and you can borrow against it up to 50 grand. And that's generally the best way because you have the capital and it's there. You can do whatever you want, and you pay it back over 5 years. You pay yourself the interest, so you're not paying it to a bank. So you're essentially your own bank. And as long as you pay it back within 5 years, there's no taxes and penalties. And plus the interest goes back to your own account too. So that's a double win. But I've never heard of a program. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And humbly, I don't know everything, so I will share that. I've never heard of a program, though, where you can actually access capital from a retirement account and not consider a distribution or a loan.
I will send you the documents if you want to look at that.
I'm curious. What is it called?
Yeah, I don't know how it's a very I don't know how the distribution and the penalties play. I know I wasn't required to pay them based on the way the C corporation was set up under the retirement plan. There's certain criteria that this program has been around for a really long time, obviously under compliant with the IRS, which is always a big thing of when you're touching retirement money. But the way they've set it up is compliant and doesn't require you as a business owner to pay back the money or pay any penalties for withdrawing.
Interesting. Well, just full disclosure, this is a financial podcast, but we're not recommending, we're not advocating, we're just chatting, and this is just part of the conversation. So I'm not endorsing, not recommending. Because my compliance team is going to listen to this and say, Brett, you can't say this or that. So just full disclosure, not recommending anything or any particular strategy or company. So we're just having conversations. So I have to say that. I will go back to one thing you did mention when you got your business going that I went through too. You needed capital. And I started investing in real estate when I was a young lieutenant. Bought my first house when I was 22. And after the first real estate crisis in 08, 09, I bought some cheap properties in Vegas. Vegas was a fire sale. I'm thinking maybe a fire sale again in the future, but who knows? And those were my piggy banks. So I got out with several $100,000, and I sold them in 2018 when I started my own firm. And I wrestled with the mindset that, I'm spending money on marketing. It'll work. It's just going to take some time. It'll work. I'm just going to spend it. It'll work. But what is it and what is working? And I'd hope, I was guessing and hoping that this money I was spending on marketing companies and they're happy to take from you would turn into future revenue. And it didn't. And I wasted, $200,000+ in my early years of hoping that these marketing companies were going to get me new clients and leads. And because I didn't want to go, I built my entire career the first time 100% referral based, and I wanted to go after certain clients versus to sit there with my hands out. So it was a shift for me. And I realized I didn't have that skill set. And it was a $200,000 lesson that sales and marketing are different, and marketing is not sales. And there is no guaranteed ROI on marketing. Now, if you spend $2,000, you're going to make $5,000. I mean, if that was a guaranteed ROI, you'd make that play all day, every day. I'll spend $2 to make $5, or I'll spend $2 to make $10. Everyone do that, but it's not. It's spend, $2 a month, $4 a month, $5 a month, $6 a month, and hope. And if you don't have the sales skills to turn those leads and opportunities into actual revenue, then you have a gap, right? You have a knowledge gap, experience gap, and that's sales. So there's a huge difference between sales and marketing. So as you were building your business, sounds like you had referrals, which are awesome. But then what was the first kind of moment when you're like, now I'm a business owner, I'm getting a few referrals, and this is a genuine business. I got to look at it differently. When was that?
I think it was when I took on a larger client that required more revenue in order to execute that project. That's when I really understood that maybe not in marketing, but in operations, like I need to have all my marketing material in place. I need to have a website. I need to have the technology to support this and actually have something to offer clients. I mean, I know what I was doing, but all that stuff was done for me at my previous employers. And now it's on me. And so part of marketing is, your brand. What does your logo look like? What does your website look like? Where are your leads coming from? What is your value proposition, and how are you different from the competitors? Where are you going to price, up or low, in the middle? And then if you do price on the low, do you still make your margins because you're using different technologies or processes that eliminate some of the time consuming or wasteful parts of the process that were at my previous employers? And so that's kind of how I looked at it. I looked at different marketing companies, and they were not cheap. There was really, I think one of the main things that I would recommend or suggest is there should be some performance metrics built into that. If you tell me, hey, I'm going to give you $30,000 to be in my marketing, and it takes you 6 months because you're going to get me followers and this and that. But what if you don't? What are the performance metrics that you are going to commit to for me to give you $30,000 for 6 months, other than a website and a video to put on my website? And so that's where I think through your learning and my learning is that it sounds great. They sound, I mean, the deck looks great. Their website looks great. But when it comes push to shove, and you're looking for the amount that went out the door and the amount coming in, and this mindset of, well, it'll be 6 months before you see this coming in, or it'll be 12 months. It's a strategy where your partner, those types of things only go so far. And then a lot of the other pieces is like, if we build your website, we own it. So if you miss a payment, we shut your website down. Well, operationally, that's not great. I want to own my own code. And so that's where I kind of started bringing my own stuff in-house and hosting my own website and trying to redesign and getting people to help me design the website versus outsourcing it and then somebody having the power just to shut me off because my credit card expired, or at one point, maybe I didn't, my checking account didn't have any money in it, and I needed a little bit of room at that point in time. But, those are the pieces that it's not right now with the technologies. Building your own website is not hard. There is a strategy to marketing. And I think that's what most companies, if they're really good, they will strategize with you before they start spending and doing advertisements, and really understand where is your product position in the market, and how can they help you build that brand and digital presence. And that's where I think I failed at a lot of those, and just still looking at those pieces, but understanding now that it is a huge investment and a huge risk. And when you're starting off, you don't need to be spending thousands and thousands of dollars on marketing.
No, I'll share a failure lesson, a personal failure lesson. And then I'm going to come to you in the last 5 minutes and kind of ask like how you've taken all these lessons to create what you're doing now and the efficiencies that you offer your clients. I think this is great. We've both come to where we are through the school of hard knocks. And so when I first started my business, I need a website too. And I read a book. It's actually sitting here on my bookshelf, A Story Brand by Don Miller. And it's a great book. And he talks about being the guide for your clients. And you're never the hero, your client's the hero. And you're Yoda or you're Obi-Wan Kenobi with young Luke Skywalker, taking him down his journey. And you need to have a website that takes your prospective client or client through this journey, and you help them where they're eventually the hero and you're not. So I read the book for $25. Great. And in the back, like, oh, come to our conference, and the VIP conference. And okay, that's $5,000. And then I need to get a hotel and an airfare and late notice because I have them coming up in Nashville. Oh, that's another $2,000. And then I go there for 3 days. They talk at you about all the wonderful things you can do and all the tools they're giving you that you can use to create this experience for your clients to have them want to work with you because you're saving them and making them the hero. And then, okay, well, I don't know how to do this. You have experts. Yeah, we'll do it for you. They want another $7,500. Then, okay, now I need to make your website. That's another $5,000. So I went from reading a $25 book, spending $20,000+ on my website. And it just took me down the path. I was sold, right? I was sold. And no one has ever come to my website and said, Brett, I want to work with you because of your website. I am in the relationship business. No one's going to take $1 million and say, Brett, I want to hire you because of your website. And I was an idiot for not seeing that first. And so when we went through our rebrand recently, I found a gentleman in India, which I will recommend, Sanjay. If any needs a web guy, come to me. $500. $500. And actually, I gave him a couple extra bonuses because he did some extra things. But he did a phenomenal job for $500. And the copy, the wording, I found another company for $1,800 to help us with the wording. So less than $2,500. New website, new copy. It's good. It shares everything we want, has the message out, and you don't have to spend I don't have to spend 10 times that amount, right? So it's just a lesson you go through, though. So that's a lesson I'll share with anyone. You don't need to spend $20,000 on your website to have your message out there. For most businesses, it's just a digital brochure. Few e-commerce sites actually generating revenue, but for most of us, our website's just a digital brochure. So I'm going to come back to you before we end here in the next 5 minutes or so. And Sam, say, how did those experiences take you to where you are now? And what are you doing now? And what's the major, I guess, I know what you do, but I'm trying to tee it up. So when a company has a lot of technologies and they have a huge tech stack and they're paying a lot for all these different apps and pieces of technology, how do you help them organize that? Or how do you recognize the need where there's redundancy or overlap, or there's opportunity for efficiency so they can have a better outcome sooner? How do you help with that?
So with all these pieces that we're talking about and looking how they all talk or they're a part of the strategy or the operations, what I found is I really like that aspect of the business, working with processes, working with systems, really focusing on efficiency. The small business owner is bombarded with routine tasks daily. So when do you or I have time to actually grow the business if we're running the business? And so with the technologies that have come into play now, and that's one of the pieces is vetting. Not all technologies are great, but what we really focus with the business owners is, what top 3 items do you like to do the least amount and take up the most amount of your time? So there's a lot of items that we go through, like you can do emails, you can do phone calls, you can do follow-up invoices. It surprises me the amount of people that say, well, we don't know how much money is coming in, or I'm 8 months behind on my accounts payable or accounts receivable. And it's like, how do you operate with 8 months behind? And so just understanding what are the high priorities. Some of those are critical and we need to address them now, and we can. And the other ones are strategic, where we look at, we document, we get your team together, we understand, we incorporate the team into it, your champions for automation. We document it in your Excel format, then we map it out in a visual, and then we connect the two and create an audio visual communication so that it's a permanent resource for your current employees and your future employees. So you don't have to keep reinventing. Once you do it the first time, which is the hardest for a lot of companies because they don't know how they got there. Like if you were to ask, hey, can you tell me step by step, how did you get here? And so that's the part where looking and working through all these different processes is where I found that's what I like to do. That's what I'm good at. And that's kind of where I found myself doing my best work and trying to help small businesses be more powerful and not bogged down in the routine, time-consuming, boring stuff that it's necessary, but through process management and automation, you can offset that and deliver more accurate, timely, and streamlined processes so that you can grow, organize your business. And ultimately, most business owners want to sell at some point or pass on a business that your family will want to run. I think that's the other piece, is that if you pass on something that the family that doesn't run well and you're passing on a headache to your kids, the first thing they want to do is potentially want to bail and sell it or shut it down altogether. And that's, a business owner's legacy. They put their life into that. And, you want to see that stay as part of the picture as long as possible by running a streamlined, efficient business that's profitable and that people want to buy their services.
Right. So two quick questions. This has been great, by the way. So it's good to I could see the logic in your mind, your approach. But I'm a business owner. At the end of the day, it's ROI. So if someone engages you, what's a typical engagement, and then what's your ROI you bring to them? So you do a study first, say, look, you're going to pay me X, and after 6 months, a year, if you follow everything we say, we should be able to save you Y in overhead or administrative efficiencies. How do you quantify your own ROI? If I'm looking to engage you or you reaching out to me, like, why would I want to hire you?
So we're going to definitely focus on time. Like what is a business owner time? How much time are they spending on what function of the business, and what function of that business is generating revenue and what function is not? And so where we show our ROI is we look at how much time you spent on non-revenue generating, your ability to shift that over to revenue. So now you can go sell. Now you can go meet with clients. Now you can go talk at conferences. You're not, putting out hiring and firing and trying to find out invoicing. You're sending nasty grams via email. You're not, that part is being automated, it's being tracked, it's being offset. Now you can focus on the pieces that are the core to your organization, and those two pieces is how much time were you spending on those and how much money were you giving up. So that opportunity cost of being able to do more sales, more awareness, more marketing, and not the routine task is where we're able to look at and say, here's where you're at. Now you have a lot more time to do the things that you signed up for. This is what most business owners signed up for, is to go out and sell and bring a good product to the market.
Right. But you didn't answer the question. How do you quantify that? Do you walk them through an exercise first to see what that is? Then you can't, because you can't answer it until you dig in. So I'd say you have to come in, spend some time to see where they're spending their time. How much time are they spending responding to emails versus going to conferences and generating revenue? And then once you see the picture, then you can make an analysis mentally of, okay, you're wasting your time, not wasting, but you're inefficient here, inefficient here, inefficient here. If I can get you out of here, go here. And how much time does it take you to sell a client? And then what's your average lifetime income or revenue for that client, or annual revenue for that client? So if I can get you time to be in front of 3 more clients, your average client revenue is $50,000 a year. That's $150,000 extra. That would be an ROI. If you do your part and I free you up to do that, is that how you do your model? Or again, I'm looking at how you would quantify your services.
So the piece is, we do look at, we come in and we prioritize the tasks that they're doing, and they tell us how much time on a weekly basis they're spending on each of these. And then we prioritize those top 3, saying, here's the ones that are costing you the most time. So we do look at a baseline of, here's your revenues as you're doing it now, right? So here's your baseline, here's your revenue. This is you doing business the way you do business. What we're going to do is we're going to come in, look at these time-consuming routine tasks that are either critical or high priority to you and your team, and then we figure out which one of those can be automated. Not everything can be automated. And then once we do that, you can see ROI through the elimination of potential overhead of if you have too many people that are doing the same thing. You can see the ROI through logistical operations of your orders getting out the door faster. There's automation, there's customer service ROI of now you're having a workflow that's, communicating, you're capturing all of your testimonials, and now your brand awareness and customer services are going up. Your product quality,
many angles. You got many angles to go. Many angles.
So it's specific by client depending on what their industry is, but we just have to baseline what they're doing and where they want to go, and give them a path of how they could get there.
So where they are today, where they want to go, and then how do you get from A to B as fast as possible, as efficient as possible?
Right.
Perfect. Two last questions. So with your program, do you charge by a project or a per client fee, or do you share in savings created or additional revenue created? So if I take here are my processes, we implement these 3 steps, and now you have more time, and now you give that time, you generate extra revenue. You give me 10% of your new revenue. So let's say it's 150,000 extra, 10% would be 15 grand. My fee is 15 grand because I created the opportunity for earn the extra revenue. So do you have flat job cost, or are you sharing in either cost savings or sharing in revenue gains? How do you get paid?
So we would work off of basically a subscription fee on a monthly subscription, depending on how much automation they want. So we would have different tiers of, if you want to, these are your top 3, but then you have your bottom 7 additional ones that you want to continue to work on. So that's kind of how we would build out these here's your top 3 priority list on a monthly basis for 6 months. And then once we're done with that, we move on to the next project. Or they can say, hey, now that you've done these in 90 days, typically 90 days is where, if I can't fix it in 90 days, then, I don't, there's nothing that I can do. My solution will not fix their problem. But normally what we do, depending on how fast the client, because it comes down to the owner's willingness and ability to share information and dedicate the time to do this, because we're at their mercy of having access to systems and processes and understanding their business model. But that's normally how we would run it. And then if they want to do more automation for more critical items, or they want to revamp, then we would just come back and look at that and say, okay, now you want to do 3, now you want to do 3 more, or you want to do 10 more, then we would just basically increase the subscription monthly fee.
Got it. 2 last things. What's the ideal client size for you? Is there a revenue count? Is it head count? What's your ideal client? And then I'm going to ask how someone reaches you.
So the ideal is your solopreneurs, your 2 to 10 employees. It's typically a client that I like to work with, because the change happens faster. It's easier to change that culture in regards to getting their buy-in.
Gotcha.
Once we get bigger, there's just more opinions and it's harder to get.
So 1 to 10. 1 to 10 is where you love to play. Perfect. That's good to know, because I think a lot of veteran entrepreneurs are in that space. They're getting a little success, but then they get confused. And how do you bring the operational efficiency into the business? As that's like the first step after inception to execution is that operational excellence and operational efficiency. So I think it's great. 1 to 10 is a lot of our audience. And then so someone wants to reach out to you, Sam, and engage you. How do they find you?
So they can email me. The email is samuel.medina@samerica.net or 832-878-8884.
Yeah, Sam's a good dude. Appreciate you coming on and sharing. This has been a phenomenal experience. And I think a lot of us are there. It's getting that operational efficiency and knowing you need some help, but not knowing where to go with it. So I think it's huge. So again, I'm Brett with Strategic Wealth Endeavor. If you need to reach me, our website is Sierra Whiskey Echo 900.com. Short for Strategic Wealth Endeavor. Brett Henderson, 310-491-7045. Again, Brett Henderson, 310-491-7045. And Patrice, back to you.
And I am simply going to say follow and subscribe to this podcast to know when the latest episode is ready. And of course, if this information was of use to you, share it with friends and colleagues. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for listening to the Veteran Entrepreneur Masterclass podcast. Don't forget to click the follow button to become notified when new episodes become available. Securities offered through IFP Securities LLC, DBA Independent Financial Partners, IFP, member FINRA, and SIPC. Investment advice offered through IFP Investors LLC, DBA Independent Financial Partners, IFP, a registered investment advisor. IFP and Strategic Wealth Endeavor INC are not affiliated. The views expressed are that of the host and are for informational purposes only, and in no event should be construed as an offer to buy or sell securities. Opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not take into account the particular investment objectives, financial situation, or needs of individual investors. Neither IFP Investors LLC, IFP Securities LLC, DBA Independent Financial Partners, IFP, nor their affiliates offer tax or legal advice. Interested parties are strongly encouraged to seek advice from qualified tax and or legal experts regarding the best options for your particular circumstances. The information given herein is taken from sources that IFP Advisors LLC, DBA Independent Financial Partners.